Good afternoon, Mr. Drake World History students, and welcome to week 2 of our distance learning program. I hope everyone is well at home, and I hope you and your families are doing well in these challenging times. And I hope school is providing some stability and structure to your day. And thank you for being here today for our screencast. Each week in Mr. Drake's 7th grade World History class, we will be doing a lesson that is broken into 2 parts. The first part will be a screencast, which we're about to watch now. And that will cover our unit topic for the week. And the screencast will look at content, insights, clarification, and other topics that will enable you to complete part 2, which is the activity. And the activity will be something that further breaks down and expands and examines the content for that week. So again, 2 parts of each lesson, and thank you for being here today for the screencast. So let's go ahead and get started. Thanks for completing week 1 lesson activity titled Middle Ages China Unit Introduction. That was our week 1 activity last week. And if you completed it, good job. Remember, if you want to find out where the screencast and the activity are for each week's lessons, those can be found in the course weekly lesson folder on Schoology. So make sure you click on week 1 if you haven't finished that. And then of course right now we're in week 2 part 1 screencast. So moving on. So today let's begin our look at our week 2 unit topic, which builds upon last week's unit introduction about Middle Ages China, where I explained what we're going to be learning in our unit. This week is week 2, and so our second topic is Middle Ages China, dynasties of China. So this particular screencast, we're going to talk about the families that ruled China during the Middle Ages. We're going to talk about when they came to power, some of the achievements that they had, and then finally, how did they fall from power? Okay, a dynasty is a political term. And if this was our regular class, we could look at our vocabulary builder, and I could ask you to break down dynasty in a couple ways. I could ask you to rate it, define it, put it into context, and so on. However, as a distance learning piece, I have yet to implement our vocabulary. That'll be coming soon. And then we can look at, when we study things like dynasties of China, we can back it up with a vocabulary understanding as well. However, for today's purposes, you might ask yourself out there, if you're watching this, do you know what dynasty means? Okay, and what dynasty means is it is a term that refers to a family that rules a country or civilization, and the power, the governing power stays in that family over generations. So the dad might pass the power to the son might pass the power to the grandson, and so on. So a dynasty is a ruling family that serves as a government in a nation. So in China during the Middle Ages, there were 4 main dynasties that we're going to look at: the Sui, the Tang, the Song, and the Yuan. So in a moment we'll go ahead and get started. So we're going to look at the political history of Middle Ages China and who these dynasties were. So here we go. Okay, the first dynasty we're going to look at came to power in 580 CE. That's right around the beginning of the Middle Ages. Remember, the beginning of the Middle Ages is marked as when Rome fell in the West, and that was in 500. So this is right around the beginning of the Middle Ages. The Sui were the first important dynasty to rule China during the Middle Ages and came to power again in 580 CE. Now, the Sui's achievements were pretty important. One that we're going to discuss today, and you'll see more when you read about the Sui in your weekly activity. One of their achievements was that they expanded the Great Wall of China for protection against Mongol invaders from the north. So you guys remember, hopefully, that you took in grade 6 world history, ancient civilizations. You completed an entire unit on China, and you learned about when the Great Wall was first being built. Now, in the Middle Ages, under the Sui, they continued to build the Great Wall. So the Great Wall really began uh, being built in the first century CE, and it really didn't finish until about the 10th century CE. So really, it was being built for nearly 1,000 years. And you might ask yourself, well, what was the purpose of the wall? And I'll give you a moment to think about that. All right. Okay, so the purpose of the wall was a military purpose. Okay, this is the north, this is the south, this is China here. This is an area that was known as Mongolia, ruled by the Mongols, which were a pretty warlike, aggressive tribe. Although much smaller than the Chinese, they were very aggressive. In fact, they were so aggressive that the Chinese built one of the world's largest man-made structures ever when they built the Great Wall of China, and the Sui expanded it during the Middle Ages, and the purpose was to keep out these aggressive Mongols, to avoid war with the Mongols, to protect Chinese borders. So you can imagine if they built a wall this size at this cost over this many years, you can imagine how aggressive and feared the Mongols of the north were. In fact, we'll find out whether the Great Wall was really able to keep the Mongols out as we move through the screencast. So again, the Sui, one of the first dynasties during the Middle Ages, they saw the Mongols as a big enough threat to really build and reinforce this wall further. Now the Sui fell from power in 618 when Emperor Yang, who became corrupt, was assassinated by an assistant. So he was killed by someone that worked for him. And why was he killed? He became corrupt. Corrupt is another kind of economic political term. Can anyone imagine what corrupt might mean? If we were in class, this would show up as a vocabulary term. Some of you may know, some of you may not. Corrupt is mostly used in a political setting, meaning that people that are given positions of power, like government officials, government leaders, if they use that power in a criminal or dishonest way, then that is known as corrupt. So the Sui, under Emperor Yang, he began to become dishonest and abusive, and he was assassinated. So that ended the Sui dynasty during the Middle Ages. That gave rise to what we know as the Tang dynasty. When Li Yuan became the new emperor in 1618 after the assassination, he started what was known as the Tang dynasty. The Tang dynasty also was responsible for some big achievements. We just looked at the Song and the extension of the Great Wall. However, the Tang, they ruled during China's golden age, when many great inventions like gunpowder were created. So right here we have a picture of gunpowder. Gunpowder was first created by the Chinese not to be used as a weapon, but it was to be used in fireworks and firework displays. And later, people figured out how to stuff it into a tube and light it on fire, and it would explode and fire a projectile, and that became the first rudimentary guns, and they were built on gunpowder. So, in the Middle Ages, the second great dynasty during that time, during the golden age of Chinese learning, the invention of gunpowder. Now, here's a question that you're going to be asked when you get to the activity in part 2 of this lesson. What economic, political, cultural impact did gunpowder have on the world in the Middle Ages? So, you can really trace that pretty far. What sort of political impact did it have? Okay, well, the invention of guns, were guns traded, were guns bought and sold, along the Silk Road between China and Europe and other major markets during the Middle Ages? And what did those guns lead to? Did they have an impact on the rise and fall of civilizations? Did they give some countries more power than others? Who could afford guns? Who couldn't? Where did guns come from? By the way, the Chinese didn't invent the gun; they invented gunpowder. But it was others that refined the use of gunpowder into a weapon. So, what was the economic impact of the gun, of gunpowder? What was the political impact? What was the cultural impact? Really great, essential questions that we're going to examine at least a little bit later on. Okay, moving on. The Tang Dynasty ended in 907 when the last Tang emperor was forced to quit over disagreements with his family. When he had those disagreements, the Tang Dynasty ended. So the golden age of Chinese learning came to an end. And that introduced our next dynasty, known as the Song Dynasty, which ruled China for nearly 300 years and began when a military general named Zhao Quan took the emperor's throne. Okay, so when the other emperor quit, there was a power struggle, and a military general named Quan, he seized control of the throne, and he started the Song Dynasty. And they lasted for nearly 300 years, so a pretty important time during Chinese history. What you see over here was something that was built during the Song period. This is what they call the Forbidden City, and this is where the emperor and his family lived. The only people that were allowed in the Forbidden City during the Middle Ages were people that were related to the family. Most regular Chinese were not allowed in. It remains a pretty famous structure today, and it's a tourist site for a lot of people that want to go visit the Forbidden City. In fact, it's someplace I'd like to see at some point. So moving on. Now the Song. What were some of the achievements during the Song Empire? Well, we've all heard of tea and rice. They're two of the most popular worldwide foods today. And they were started in, the farming of tea and rice was started in China under the Song. So tea cultivation, rice cultivation started in China, Middle Ages, Song Dynasty. And, it says something about their technological savvy, the way, to be able to cultivate rice on a really high level. That indicates a highly technological civilization. In addition to that, the production of tea, the cultivation of tea on a wide scale too indicates high levels of technology. So we think of the Chinese today as being technologically and scientifically advanced. But what we need to remember as world history students is that starting in 6th grade when you looked at ancient world China, and in 7th grade when we look at Middle Ages world China, all the way to today, with China in the news today, we think they have been a scientific and technological leader in the world for over 2,000 years. And to put that into perspective, the USA as a nation is only 240 years old. So China's been at this a long time, and the Middle Ages were a big part of their success. All right, moving on. The Song Dynasty that we've been discussing, they were conquered by that group called the Mongols that we discussed earlier when we discussed the Great Wall of China and the desire of the Sui dynasty to protect themselves against the Mongols. Well, the Sui, the Tang, and the Song, came along, and the Mongols were kept at bay. However, by 1279 CE, the Song dynasty was overthrown by the Mongols. So what does that say about the Great Wall of China and the Sui's effort to expand and strengthen it? Did it keep the Mongols out? Well, by 1279, we have our answer. The Mongols were not kept out. So that introduces our next dynasty, the Yuan dynasty, which started in 1279 when the Mongols conquered China. In 1279, led by the notorious Genghis Khan. This is Mr. Khan right here. They ruled China for the next 100 years. So the Mongols, outsiders, defeating China and ruling as outsiders for 100 years under the Yuan dynasty. Now, what were the Mongols and the Yuan? What were some of their achievements? Well, interestingly enough, the Yuan during the Yuan dynasty under the Mongols, they promoted freedom of religion by allowing the practice of Buddhism, Islam, and Confucianism to all thrive and survive. So government-sponsored freedom of religion. Now, that's pretty interesting because that was back in the 12th century. If you look at Europe in the 12th century, there is absolutely positively not freedom of religion. As we learned earlier, the Catholic Church ruled pretty strictly and prevented any other religions from penetrating European Middle Ages society. However, in the East, in China, under the Mongols, freedom of religion was emerging, and Buddhism, Islam, and Confucianism could all be practiced, which is quite the opposite of what was happening in Europe. Okay, so and of course the USA today, we practice freedom of religion. So We share that with the Mongols of Middle Ages China. And then the Yuan dynasty also came to an end. Over time, as Mongol rulers of the Yuan became corrupt, we learned what that word corrupt meant, and abusive, a new dynasty called the Ming took power in 1369 as the Middle Ages ended. So we started in the 5th century, we're ending in the 13th century. We looked at 4 different dynasties and looked at their achievements and looked at how they fell. So when you move on to your activity, we will be going more in depth. You will be doing a reading activity that looks at these 4 dynasties a little more in depth. And you will have a couple activities that you can do around that reading. Okay. Our week 2 activity is titled Middle Ages China, Dynasties of China, and includes 4 parts. So now that we're coming to the end of our screencast, let's talk about the activity that comes next. The 4 parts include, you're going to have a topic reading text, and then you're going to have a series of text-based support questions, and then you're going to have 1 independent question and 1 enrichment question. The text-based questions can be done by only referring to the activity because the text is attached, and so these questions are based directly on the attached text. The independent questions use some information from the text, but they also, if you want to really answer this question effectively, you can use outside research as well to answer it. Okay. And you can answer it in any writing format you want. And you'll see that when you get onto the instructions for the activity. And then finally, the last, number 4, is we have an enrichment question based on our topic. And the enrichment question takes your critical thinking to the next level. And it asks you to really break down a question into the race format that we've been using. So you'll be asked to restate the question, answer the question, cite your evidence, explain your answer in 2 ways, and then sum it up. So this whole activity is 4 parts. One more time: text support questions, independent questions, enrichment questions. These 2, if you want to really expand on your answers, you can use research. So and also, you guys, instructions for each part are listed on each activity in Schoology. I hope that didn't get cut off down there, but once you click open Schoology and you click on the activity, it will open it up, and you can go ahead and complete that activity. In a perfect world, on Monday you click open Mr. Drake's distance learning folder, you watch our screencast, which we're doing right now, and then you click on the activity, and you really have 4 days to complete the activity. And then on Friday, thankfully our Zoom live class is on Friday. Most of you hopefully will be able to have seen the screencast and finish the activity, and then we can talk about it on Friday when we meet as a live group, which I'm really looking forward to every week because I miss you guys, and I hope everyone's doing well. Okay, so that's about it for this week. Our week 2 screencast, lesson 2, week 2 screencast. Make sure you look for that week 2 activity and get it completed. And I will be looking forward to seeing you guys on Friday at 11 o'clock. Remember, the Zoom invitation for our meeting is in the announcements on your Schoology opening page, so make sure you click on that to find our Zoom meeting on Friday. And some of you, I might hear from you during office hours this week as well. So until then, I hope everyone's safe. I really miss you guys, and Mr. Gallego, Mr. Bartleson, and Mr. Cortez and I, we talk a lot about you guys and who we're hearing from and who we're not. So if we haven't heard from you, really try to email us or come to one of our Zoom classes, or make sure you complete an assignment on Schoology so we really know where everyone is, and we know you guys are alive and well, and we love to hear from you. So take care, and I will see you Friday.